Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're breaking down a truly fascinating architectural visualization of education and society. We're looking at a piece from the Sanatyan Yatri blog titled The Sadhvidya Strategy. Now, what makes this text so compelling is that it doesn't just describe a way of teaching. It basically blueprints an entire societal structure based on traditional Indian frameworks. And then, it uses that very blueprint to launch a rather sharp, geographically based critique of modern Western educational systems. It's a completely different way to look at how we learn, how we work, and ultimately, how we build civilizations.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll map out the traditional Indian framework, looking specifically at the vertical kula and the horizontal gurukula. Then, we'll uncover the concept of Sadhvidya, unpack the author's critique of Western education, and finally, explore what they call a fertile land worldview.
Starting with Section 1, the traditional Indian framework.
So, the author posits that the traditional Indian education system wasn't just, a classroom curriculum. It was an entire societal grid supported by two complementary institutions. I want you to actually visualize a grid here. On one axis, you have a system designed to ground a person in highly practical, worldly tasks, giving him the tangible skills to earn a livelihood. Then, on the intersecting axis, you have a system designed to connect that same person to higher metaphysical principles. These two axes work together to shape the individual and society.
Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 2, Kula, or vertical learning.
Let's look at the first pillar of this grid, the vertical axis. The text refers to this vertical framework as Kula Vyavastha. Think of kulas as vertical silos of learning and community, people aggregated around common interests, activities, or professions. And it was through this vertical silo that an individual inherited their culture, their values, and, most importantly for their day-to-day life, their professional competence.
Within these vertical kulas, learning was incredibly hands-on. The author notes that skills weren't really categorized as formal education, they were practical means to fulfill a social need. Learning happened through something called sangatyam, which translates to learning by association and observation. So right from childhood, you'd be surrounded by experienced practitioners. It was continuous, on-the-job training under a skilled guide. Honestly, it's kind of like a lifelong, immersive apprenticeship. And what's really vital to understand here is that kulas are highly dynamic. As technology, geography, or economic conditions change, the text explains that new kulas are born to serve new purposes, while older, irrelevant ones simply dissolve or merge. They are in constant motion.
Which brings us to Section 3, Gurukula, the horizontal worldview.
So if the vertical kula handles practical livelihood, something else has to handle the philosophical side, right? That is the Gurukula Vyavastha. If the kula is the informal vertical silo of a specific profession, the gurukula is the formal education system that cuts horizontally across all of those verticals. It's centered around an instituted authority that teaches metaphysical subjects and higher principles. The idea is that a student learns this unified worldview and then carries that profound perspective back into their individual vertical profession.
And this brilliantly illustrates how these axes cross. You have the dynamic, ever-changing vertical lines of the kula providing practical skills, intersecting with the horizontal lines of the gurukula, providing a metaphysical worldview. Where they meet, you cultivate a completely holistic individual, someone capable of understanding both the tangible, day-to-day work and the deeper dimensions of human existence.
Now, the Gurukula system didn't just throw random subjects at a student. It guided the learner through a very specific six-step journey of the mind. It starts with vinyam, which is grounding behavior, essentially making a person eligible to actually observe the world. This leads to vidya, an awareness that illuminates the path to learning. From there, the student achieves gnanam, or inspired knowledge through an inquiring mind. When that knowledge is practically applied and verified, it becomes vijnanam, experiential knowledge. This active application fosters prajnanam, which is true wisdom and discernment. And finally, the whole journey culminates in kala, a refined artistic skill or expression that inspires the larger society. It's an incredible progression from basic grounding all the way up to societal inspiration.
Moving to Section 4, the concept of Sadhvidya.
So, what anchors this entire grid? What is the permanent foundation beneath this journey of the mind and all those changing vertical professions? The text defines Sadhvidya as the fundamental, unchanging pursuit of truth. Remember how we said the vertical kulas are dynamic, being born and dying based on technological shifts? Well, Sadhvidya is the exact opposite. It is the eternal, stable source. The author describes it as the mother source from which all new social institutions and knowledge systems are born. It doesn't change with time or place, it's the harmonizing force of an evolved society across generations.
All right, let's look at Section 5, the Western Education Critique. Having established this complex framework, the blog post makes a sharp pivot into a socioeconomic critique. Now, we are going to impartially map out exactly what the author argues here. The author claims that the dominant Western education system we see today is actually a hybrid design. According to the text, it evolved by using the Indian education system as a reference point, but then combined it with Chinese examination methodology. Furthermore, the author argues this system was specifically designed this way by imperialists for a very distinct geographic and resource-based reason.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the author's geographic hypothesis. The text asserts that the Western worldview is deeply inspired by snow and sand desert civilizations. Because these harsh environments lack organic resources, the entire civilization, and therefore its educational focus, must be built upon travel and transport just to procure basic sustenance.
The author breaks this hypothesis down quite specifically. In desert or snow civilizations, where fertile soil is scarce, you can't just grow what you need locally. You require massive travel and huge machines to get your food. The author argues that designing a society entirely around travel and transport creates immense chaos and continuous flux. It wastes a staggering amount of time and human labor. And the ultimate price? According to the blog, it's human tranquility. This fundamental design flaw results in a society that is always unsettled, where the human mind becomes unstable and continuously craves stimulation. The author contends that the current Western education system merely serves to create the newer technologies needed to maintain this exhausting, never-ending transport loop.
Finally, Section 6, a fertile land worldview.
This leads us directly to the author's proposed solution. The text draws a very stark contrast between two geographic realities. On one side, you have the desert civilization model, driven by scarcity, heavily reliant on transport and machines, resulting in chaos and mental flux. On the other side, you have fertile societies. Because organic resources are readily available right there, there is no overwhelming need to travel and transport for basic sustenance. According to the author, leaning into this fertile reality saves an incredible amount of human time and effort, naturally fostering real human tranquility.
So the crucial point is how the author ties this geographic argument back to the educational grid we explored at the very beginning. By redesigning our worldview from the perspective of fertile lands, we actively reduce our reliance on unwanted machines and transport. We gain back our time and our tranquility. And in doing so, the author argues, we completely validate the traditional Indian education system where that eternal horizontal pursuit of truth, Sadhvidya, actually has the space and tranquility it needs to enrich those practical vertical professional kulas.
It's a highly provocative framework, isn't it? It links the literal way we learn directly to the geography of our resources and the state of our minds. Which leaves us with a question directly inspired by the author's critique to end on today. When you look at your own educational and professional environment, does your daily routine reflect a pursuit of tranquility, or does it reflect that continuous craving for stimulation and flux? It's a powerful lens to which to view our modern lives. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep learning, and I'll catch you next time.